father. The older you get, your head's getting harder. Pick up the phone when he calls you. You know he's alone. He's preaching 'cause he loves you. Where have you been? Jack's been waiting in your room every night. Why don't you stay home tonight? Could you waste your life if you painted mine? Now the day has died, but it's too late to close your eyes. Time keeps telling me to change, but I'm fragile and afraid. Could you waste your life if you painted mine? Now the day has died, but it's too late to close your eyes. To close your eyes. Close your eyes. Clock it ticks, I have to get older. When I wake up and the dream is over, packed away, my life moving slower. Oh, I'd hate to get any older. Oh, I'd hate to get any older. Do you wanna be it takes? I have to like your father. The older you get, and the dream's getting harder. Pick up the phone. Away, my afraid you'll hate the words I use. I'm sorry, but it's been weighing on me. No, I can't lie when I sing. No, I can't lie when I sing. 'Cause my tear, there's nothing left in me. So just hold on, but don't hold on to me. Tried my best this time to keep your hand in mine, but it's written now and I'm ripping out the page. And you fantasize of chasing lights, but you won't get far with half your heart. Say New York's cold for you, darling. So pack your bags, don't throw it all away. You know I'm falling from you, darling. And I'm afraid there's no more room to stay. I'm afraid there's nothing left to say. I still wait for you to call, though I told you that we shouldn't speak outside normal protocol. How could you give me your all? Why should you wait for me at all? Cause yesterday I wrote a little tune. I'm afraid you hate the words I used. I'm sorry, but it's been weighing on me. No, I can't lie when I sing. No, I can't lie. My new house sits upon the clouds. Right next door is the lost and found. Picking fights with the ghost downstairs. Turn off the lights and plug my ears. Trees are killing off in a lovely kind of way, and course. I'm pleading from the porch, just stay. Maybe the winter will cut me some slack this year. Maybe I'm telling myself what I'd like to hear. And tonight I hope I fall asleep before my hands do. I might come close to drifting off, but I don't plan to. Viciously lonely, lost respect. My best friend is the crick in my neck. Sit back and stone me, toss your rocks. Pretty good aim if you count headshots. Tend to spend a couple hours a day waiting by the phone, hoping there's nothing to say. But I've got the feeling that my wake-up call is on its way. But as my youth begins to expire, I'll slowly put a little less wood on the fire. Maybe it'll turn like a roll of old film or a bottle of wine it's been waiting to spill. Viciously lonely, tossed around. Most these days I'm stuck in town. So come on and show me. Lay it down, put the band in the deep end, and try to get loud. Back and forth halfway down the poles. So why the dog still barking at the fireworks show?
I'm Ayisha Jaffer. I'm hanging out with the Backseat Lovers today. Josh and Jonas in the studio with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
So I have to say, I know that you guys as a group are from different parts of Utah, but I don't often hear of musicians out of Utah other than and I'm sure there's more than what I know, which is The Used and Jewel. But I just wanted you to maybe bring us into the Utah music scene. What is that like? And how did you kind of come up from that?
It's a really cool scene. It's changed so much, I'd say, over the last 5 years. But I grew up in a little town called Heber City, which has no music scene at all. There's only one or two high school bands when I was going to high school there. But yeah, going to shows when we were kind of first starting to get into the Salt Lake scene, it was going to Kilby Court and down in Provo at this venue called the Velour. Those were kind of the two all ages backbone of the scene venues. Yeah.
There's a lot of DIY venues too, and that just kind of pop up throughout Utah that we played at getting started and stuff.
Yeah, lots of young indie bands, indie rock bands, especially just like since the pandemic. It's just kind of like seriously probably like 30 or 40 bands that I've never even heard of just came out of nowhere. It's really special.
It's like that time of stillness, right? You have a moment and then you're like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Well, then I also heard you guys like play like basement shows and things like that. So kind of people took it upon them to bring in music to their homes in Utah to you as well.
Yeah, I know. House shows are kind of like our favorite way of performing it, if possible. We kind of, on our very first tour, that was kind of like the main intention was to play as many house shows as possible.
Well, and then you jumped from there, of course, which we're going to get to. But I wanted to ask as well, I've read somewhere that you guys met in high school, but also at an open mic. So I'm kind of curious of the real origin story of the Backseat Lovers.
Yeah.
We met like when we were in high school. I think I was like 17 or something, but me and Josh met at an open mic at Velour, that other like all ages venue. And it was kind of like between, I'm from Sandy, which is like an hour away from Heber, but it was like the middle point between us. Yeah.
I had been playing with Juice for probably like 6 months or so, maybe. But I was like desperately wanting to start a band and like looking for people to play with, and Juice and I had just like would work on songs in my parents' basement. This was like junior to senior-ish year of high school. But yeah, I was standing in line at an open mic and I like look over to my left and there's this guy with a really cool pedal board. I was like, it's a cool pedal board, dude. And that was Jonas. And then we didn't end up, because they have like a capacity limit on how many people can play. So we didn't end up getting to play at the open mic. So we just kind of like played our songs to each other outside the venue, and I invited him to come jam with me and Juice, and bada bing, bada boom.
And there you go. That's awesome. I love that you're like, even though we can't play, we're going to play for each other. And that's kind of, I love that. I can see that in my mind. Well, you guys are one of those rare artists too, right? Where I like to say the people chose you, right? You have a viral hit, and that's Kilby Girl, which now when you were mentioning Kilby Court, is that based on? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So that connects in that way. But I know you get asked this a lot, but I think it's a fascinating thing. Like when you have a viral hit, like what was happening to you guys as a band as this kind of momentum was starting to grow?
It was kind of, I think, yeah, I mean, it was kind of a unique situation because it was during the lockdown. So like, yeah, like we were kind of like working on a lot of music. Like I felt like a little disconnected because we weren't like going to like playing shows and like seeing our fan base grow, like physically,
yeah,
I guess, in person. But
yeah, it was like kind of intangible, just like a number on a screen for like a year. So it was like we were pretty like, I don't know, we tend to try and like separate ourselves from that as well. Like just try to keep it like when you're in the room with people, that's when you kind of like see it for what it is, I guess. So yeah, once we started touring, I think that was when it kind of like became more real, that people were starting to, I don't know, listen to the music and find something in it.
Well, you realize, right, that number then as a person, and you're like, oh, that number is real, and these people are listening, which is like so powerful and cool, which is why I think viral hits cool, because it is really like, instead of someone necessarily scouting you, it's like individual people who are like, that's good, like, world, listen to this, which I think is so special. And that kind of led you now to, you're signed to Capitol. This is your first album, Waiting to Spill, on the record and on the record label. And you worked with David Greenbaum, who I know has worked with Beck, has worked with the Gorillaz, Paul McCartney. I'm curious, did you guys get to like choose this producer to work with, or how did that like process kind of begin?
Yeah, so we've kind of, the entire process of making and finishing the album we did before signing to Capitol Records. So it was kind of like all between us and our management, just kind of like trying to piece it all together. And we ended up meeting with a bunch of different producers because we had never worked with one before, only like sound engineers in the studio. But it was when we had been taking a bunch of interviews, like Zoom interviews with producers and sending our demos of the songs. And when we started talking to David, it was just kind of like, it felt like something clicked. It was like he kind of understood what we were trying to say with the songs, even though they were still very much in their like infancy. So yeah, it was a really special thing to get to work with David. He's really intuitive and humble, creative person.
Did you kind of, as opposed to like what you're saying, how you guys made music before with like sound engineers and now working with the producer, did you find a big difference in that process for making this record as opposed to your prior one?
I think like we were kind of looking for a producer that played a similar role in a lot of ways as an engineer and like mixing engineer, I guess plus a little more. But yeah, I think like it definitely, like the chemistry that we had with David was a big, yeah, it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like, one of the bigger differences for me in working with David was the time that we had in pre-production. We were out in LA for a while, and we went to his garage and just jammed the songs in his garage, so he could kind of like get an understanding of the live feel, and that was kind of like a way to like make a blueprint for how we wanted to track everything once we got into the studio. And I think that was like a big difference with working with a producer, was kind of like seeing the whole album before going in and starting to mic stuff up,
Well, and that kind of leads me into my next question, because I feel like the album is so well curated. Like you're telling a story, and I'm just curious what you hope listeners take away from that story.
That's a good question. I think, well, when we're writing songs, and Jonas and I wrote a lot of the songs on this album together, we're usually just kind of telling our own story and using, I don't know, writing for us is very much trying to understand yourself and understand the situation you're in, and give it context to yourself. And that's why it's such a satisfying thing, is it feels like you're the most in the moment in your life when a song is happening in real time. So I think the album is very much just like us trying to get the most direct pipeline to what is like our experience of growing up over the last couple of years. And, when we very first started 3 or 4 years ago on the album, we were all kind of moving out of our parents' houses and moving in together and moving to the city. And over that 3 years, a lot of growth happened as well, both as a band and as individuals. So in terms of just what we'd want people to take away from it, I think to me, just like if someone were to have a perspective that they can have their heart and their mind open kind of in a similar way that we did when we were writing, and then whatever the story means to them at that point is like, well worth it for me. Just like whatever resonates with them is what's important. Like we can't really decide that anymore at that point. Yeah. Well, one of the songs that we're thrashing here off that record is Growing Dying, which I think is a good, like almost like a thesis statement a little bit. I find that track so relatable, especially like the clerk looking into their eyes, because I'm one of those people, if you don't look in my eyes, I'll like do that whole thing, but that connection and that whole story. So I am curious, I mean, you kind of touched on it. It is about personal stories, but what launched that specific idea for that song? That's a good question. I'm pretty sure I remember I was sitting on the couch and I have a couple of houseplants. I mean, it's kind of literal to the way the song started, but chronologically the song started with the first line, and I was actually kind of upset that my plants were dying, and I was like very like emotionally attached to them. and I was also kind of going through an emotional, I guess it was a little bit lower than usual. So that was where the first line kind of started, and then I actually went to the grocery store, and I didn't really know if it was going to be a song or not. And then leaving the grocery store, I was just like, I felt like kind of like I was a part of this like machine or something, just like feeling like, am I the only person that's like trying to like see what's going on around me and connect with myself and connect with other people, and just in that scenario. And then on the drive home, the second line kind of came in, and I was like, okay, this is starting to be a song. And then I remember it wasn't until we played it together as a band, probably within a couple days of that starting that song, I just remember in the first like 15 minutes of us playing it a couple times, it was like, whoa, like this is a song. Like, and at the time we were like starting to get pretty decided on what our track list would be for the album. And then that kind of just changed everything. We just kind of like, maybe we need to like step back and like let ourselves like see how this can tell the story even more, and like how it can change. And from there, I think we ended up writing a few more songs that ended up really changing the album. Yeah, it was kind of a long answer.
No, I love it. But like in the process, you never know what's going to happen. And that's kind of magic of it too. Mm. Well, you're on the road. You're here today. You're going to be playing the Palace Theater, which is just a beautiful space tonight. And it's going to be great. And I know you've been like, you guys have shared stages with like Jack White and the Killers and played all these iconic festivals. And I'm wondering, what have you learned on the road so far?
Yeah, I think like something, about just like being on the road is like, this just comes to mind, like conserving yourself, I think. Mm-hmm. Like, 'cause I think like for me at least, like I want to go out and like, I feel like I just want to experience everything, and like, because we're in a new place every day and we're doing like new things every day. And, I like have tried to find a balance of like when I can do that, and when I need to like just take a moment for myself and like just like lay down and sleep in our bus.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think I agree. I think finding some sort of routine is really important. I think, I don't know, because every day is so unpredictable that for us as a band and with the crew, and we're all very close and have very like personal relationships, and we have a lot of fun together. But also I think with that much like emotional vulnerability, there is like room for people to get their feelings hurt, or for when things go wrong, it can feel emotionally a lot, especially just being away from home and the days racking up. But I think having like, I think the biggest thing for me is just I've learned a lot more about trying to be more patient with both myself and the situation, and to like treat every day as just, this is just one day, and the way that this day went or the show went doesn't necessarily affect it. This isn't what my whole life means, or what my whole career, or what the whole band's career means. Because there's good shows and bad shows, just like there's good days and bad days, you know?
Yeah, you got to take it day by day. And I love that you're conserving as well, because that's like something that's happening more, because we live in this kind of wild world that people they go really hard and then they wear themselves out and you can't keep going. So it's really good to hear that way of thinking on the road. Now, another thing I wanted to ask about, because, we were in lockdown and, we're still kind of in this weird world, but I'm just curious of like, when you're hitting those stages, when you're out on tour, do you remember, is there like a certain moment where you felt like the fan artist connection that was particularly special to you?
I don't know. I think we feel it, like every single night there's like a different, in a completely different way even. I think for me, one of my favorite things about performing on stage is just making like connections with individual people, and like even if it's just for like 2 seconds, making eye contact with someone and like seeing that the song has like a place in their life is just like the most special thing. It's really hard to like put into words how gratifying that is. It's like, I don't know, it's just kind of like you just see each other for just that one moment. And I think we all have those experiences with fans like every single night that we play.
Yeah. To be seen is really special, I think.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that you guys are doing that I think is so awesome, and I'm an advocate of this for artists using their platform for good. You guys are donating some of your proceeds to all these different organizations, including one here in St. Paul. Was it I can't remember now. St. Jonas. You can just cut this out, but it's someone's coat, and I can't remember.
Yes.
Oh, Joseph's coat.
Joseph's coat. That's what
I
I was. I was getting with Josh and Jonas, so I was thinking Jonas's coat, and I know it's not. Which is a very special one, and I'm just curious, what ignited this idea and got it into fruition, and why did you choose some of these specific organizations?
Yeah, I think a big thing for us in traveling around the world is just like realizing that every community has their own specific situation and needs, and like a lot of that can be across the board with certain charities, but just like going from town to town and like trying to make like a more personal impact. We wanted to try and find one specific to each community that was like as relevant and like as timely as possible. And especially going into the winter now, just like people needing more and more resources. That was kind of where our heads were at, was trying to make it as like personal as possible to the places we're playing.
I think that's really cool. So thank you for doing that, and cheers to you guys for that. Well, is there anything else you want our listeners to know before I let you guys go?
Well, if you're in St. Paul, definitely wear a jacket. It's so cold here.
It just happened, if it helps. Yesterday it was like 66.
Yeah, we were in Chicago yesterday, and it was like...
You're expecting it to be like freezing, nice. But it was really warm.
And then we woke up this morning, it's like...
No. It's okay. You got coffee. You're set. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us here in the studio. Again, the Backseat Lovers here at the Current Studios, Waiting to Spill is out now.